Oh, there we are. In the basic session, we talked about singer's posture from last year. We talked about something that you didn't identify as activating the vibrator. That's just something that's going there. The introduction, singing is a heightened form of speech which is sustained, projected, and inflected, meaning it goes up and down. Sound production is the balanced interplay between an activator, that's what you do with your breath, the vibrator, that's the vocal folds, and the resonator, or the vocal tract. And when the activator, vibrator, and resonator work efficiently together, you can make more beautiful, more easily projected, and more easily inflected sounds. So all of this stuff that we worked on in basic has to do with creating that kind of an environment. We spent last year talking about how to find posture. We also talked a little bit about something that I identify as called threshold singing. That's where you get your breath active enough to make your vocal folds vibrate spontaneously so that you don't have to force your sound, but you let the sound flow out. And in the very simplest way to describe it, what I'm trying to encourage from all of you is a way of singing that allows your voice to flow out of you rather than to be driven out of you. Not to make your voice happen, but to set up the conditions where it will happen by itself. By the time, if we're successful in doing this, you will find that you're more successful with your singing. You're getting better results for less work. Now, that's worth a lot. If we could do that in business all the time, we'd be real happy. The next thing to talk about, though, and we did talk about this last year, was how to develop the parts of the activator, or the breathing system. You remember we played the fat skinny game. We did a little blowing on the back of your hand and drinking through a martini straw. Those kind of things that help you find your diaphragm, find your abdominal muscles, find the interplay between them a little bit. That was all that was associated with the basic unit last year. However, I've added a segment to that, and I'd like to introduce that to you folks before we go much farther in preparation for what's going on in the second round. And that has to do with tuning the resonator. Didn't talk about that too much last year. There is a principle in light, with light waves and sound waves, called refraction. And that's the light waves, when a light wave enters a prism, it gets refracted and bent, and it goes in multiple directions, creates a rainbow. But that's not the only application of refraction. If light is generated in a small source, and then it expands into a big space, the light beams will actually bend and fill out the whole space. And the same thing seems to be true with sound waves, that they aren't just necessarily linear, that when they leave the small space of my body and go out, they have a tendency to expand in multiple directions and to fill the space that's available to it. And so that's a principle of refraction that I'd like to share with you. I was introduced to this 3 or 4 years ago, and it just didn't click with me. I was talking to an acoustician, a scientist, and he described it, and it didn't make any sense to me, so I just dismissed it. And then I came back around to it in my own thoughts, tried it out, and thought, I should have listened more carefully the first time I talked to that scientist, because it makes sense. And it simply stated is that when sound is made in a small space, a small chamber, and then it leaves that small chamber and enters into a bigger space that is at least 6 times bigger than itself, that the sound will expand exponentially, both in quality, richness, and volume. And so I'm going to demonstrate that to you. Right now, that can happen to the human voice on 2 separate levels. The first one happens right here in the voice box. In the voice box, there is a chamber that's sided about by some cartilage that are inside the larynx. The sound leaves the vocal folds, it enters into this chamber, and it gets vibrated and resonated. Immediately, it leaves the voice box and enters into the back of the throat. And if a person tunes the back of their throat to be at least 6 times as big as the space that's in the laryngopharynx, then all of a sudden you get something magical happening. And I'll demonstrate it to you. Right now, I'm not talking with that refractive resonance at all. I'm just talking in a normal way. But as soon as I tune that resonator and open up that space, you can hear what happens to the quality of my sound. It becomes more complete, more rich, and that has nothing to do with the amount of physical effort to make more sound. It's a strictly acoustical thing. And if you can learn how to do that, you can sing with greater ease than you've ever sung with before and sound better in the process. So the ways that you discover that is that you become aware of your laryngopharynx, or your voice box. On men, it's about the size of the tip of my thumb. And for you ladies, it's about the size of the tip of my index finger or so, somewhere between that and the tip of my little finger, depending on the size of the person. So I don't have very much trouble taking a space like that, that's right here, and adjusting the inside of my throat until I can imagine myself being able to fit 6 of those things or more. And as soon as I do that, the quality of my voice changes, not because the energy coming out of the vibrator is any more powerful, it's not more driven, it's not louder, but acoustically you can hear what happens. And so that's really very simple to learn, but it's also very profound. What's the problem with it? The problem is that when you first do it, it feels weird. But when you get used to it, you say, oh, well, am I okay? Is it all right to sound like this? Because it doesn't feel what's normal. And then you start listening in the room and think, whoa, that's pretty cool. And pretty soon you have the motivation to kind of make that change. In very physical ways, there are only many number of things you can move in the back of your throat. There is some flexibility in the back of our throat. And one of them is the soft palate that normally sort of hangs low at the back of our mouths, allowing sound to pass up into our nose and out through the mouth. We breathe through our nose. The sound comes in, our soft palate's down. However, if you take the low soft palate and you raise it, that changes the shape of that chamber. Gives it more space. The other part of it is right here at the voice box. The voice box can go up and down. The best place for it to be is comfortably down. And lots of square dance callers, when they go from their low range to their middle range, accomplish it by taking their voice box and just raising it up about a ½ inch in their throat. And then you get this kind of a sound that gets higher, but who cares? Okay? So that's one thing that can happen. And the third one is a real pernicious problem with most Americans, and that is our tongue, which attaches right down here at the back of our throat, kind of starts at our teeth and rolls back down our throat this way. And if, in the process, right at that point where it turns the corner, there's some tension that occurs, that tongue will start to bulge out into that space and make that space smaller. So the 3 things that will reduce that, the space I'm talking about is the oral pharynx, the space from the larynx up to the back of the mouth. The things that will make that smaller is to let your soft palate drop, your larynx rise, or your tongue to loll back. If you can learn to sing with the low larynx, a raised soft palate, and your tongue forward, you're home free. Of course, people spend years and years and years learning how to do that, but in its most simple application, there's no problem to it at all. I'd like to, we just have too many souls to be able to do this all together, or one by one. So would you all stand up for a second, and let's, I don't know if we got too many of us to be able to do that. So let's migrate to the back of the room where there's a little more open space and go into a circle. Yeah. Would you all circle left?
Not for this.
No.
He's been coming to this too long.
Yeah.
Roy has your list for you. Thank you. I didn't know you'd be here early.
We ran out of the handouts for the second part.
Did we run out of, how many did not get handouts for the second part? Because it may be that we can send somebody out to make enough copies. How many do we need? About 10 more? Need about 10 more? Okay, so could you run and make 10 or 12 of those and have them come back? We run out of the first one too. How many didn't get a first? About same number? A few more? Okay, Marianne, thank you. Okay, so now spread out around so that there's equal distance between. Yeah, like, give me a little space here. Yeah. This looks like the East Coast, and this looks like Texas over here. Come on, let's get a little, open out a little bit. Okay, so what I want to, anybody got a choice of songs they'd like to sing? Everybody know Amazing Grace? No? Okay. Forget that one. Okay. That was it. We did. But it took me a little slow to figure out why that was so. All right, so now let's go to Oh, beautiful for spacious skies. Or not, God bless America. Everybody got, can you sing that land that I love? Can we sing that one? Dag nabbit, that's right. Okay. Oh, Lord, I'll say. What?
I'll Fly Away or Amazing Grace.
Yeah. How does I Fly Away go? Now, the only guy that doesn't know it is the guy standing in the middle here. And I don't have to sing. So, John, will you get a start? What? Okay, but would you want to? Yeah. Okay, so now the first task is I want you to sing, but I want you to sing small in your throats. Okay? For most of you, that'll just be to say, sing normal. Because most everybody gets small. Here's the first exercise. Swallow and hold the swallow. You feel your tongue rises, your soft palate comes down, everything sort of comes into the middle here as a means of sending the food down your throat. Those muscles are the muscles that should not be active when you are singing. And for almost everybody, they are, in one degree or another. So, here we go. Did we decide on Amazing Grace? Okay, so here we go. Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound. That's enough. I can tell already that you all know exactly what I'm talking about. Because y'all do that really well. Let's not ever do that again, shall we? Instead, what I want you to do is to imagine a small thing here in you ladies. It's about the size of a big fat almond in your throat right here. And can you make space for 6 or 7 almonds above that? For you gentlemen, it's more like a Brazil nut. You know, it's big. All right, but that means that you got to make some space for it. So here we go. Collectively, you can already hear the difference, can't you? I want you to do it again, but this time, don't listen so much to everybody else, but try to feel what happens, because some of you are not quite at that place where it's 6 times as big, and so you don't ever get that thing kicking into gear. What happens, that you can make it a little bit of a stretch, but not to the point where it's the proportions are right. So here you go again. Those of you that are having trouble doing that, you want to try to set yourself up so that all the words that you say, all of the vowels that you say, are in a stretched position. What I mean by that is right back here. So instead of, you hear it change? I just stretch the open, try to take the vowel and make it as tall as you can make it. Go. Sing grace, how sweet the sound. Thank you. Now, some folks find some of that really easy to do, but some of those syllables don't fit very good. For example, amazing grace, how sweet. Because the E vowel is a little weird. But you know what? What you start out with is that space and then figure out how to say E. Amazing grace, how sweet. You hear the difference? It's the same vowel, but it's tuned differently. So here you go. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. And this is so effective whenever you're singing ballads, or an old cowpoke went riding out one dark and windy day, as compared to an old cowpoke went riding out one dark and windy day. Upon a bridge he rested as he went along his way. You hear the difference? And it's not like I'm not singing harder. I'm just tuning it differently. And you can do it too. Each one of you can take ownership of that notion just by experimenting with it. Raise your hands if when you went into that stretched place, it felt differently than what you're used to. Raise your hand if that was an unusual sensation. Yeah, maybe not. I didn't see, come on, let's see. Anybody not get any, was there nothing to be gained from that? Was there, and let me see if you didn't feel the difference between.
For that particular piece of music, because that one, that's the only way it sounds right.
Yeah,
Is
that big mellow sound.
It roll out.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of other pieces, I'll still clamp up on. But
Sure.
that one, it just just can't.
You can't do it in that little, yeah, because it's supposed to be reflective of a big, expansive soul that's inside of a person, and you can't do that out of a puny throat. But you can sing, 76 trombones led the big parade. Or you can say, 76 trombones led the big parade. You can do either one of them. No luck?
Yeah, I got it.
Oh, good.
A question I have on that, and you used a perfect example. 76 trombones. Oh, what a beautiful morning. The songs that I have heard sung that way by very accomplished musicians, it just comes out. You know, how do we make ourselves do that in other pieces of music that you haven't, and how can your voice emulate things like that once it's heard it?
It isn't really as much a question of hearing it and then imitating it, which is what many of you do. You buy the records and you imitate what you hear on the sound. What I'm inviting you to do is to get a feel for what it feels like in the inside when you have that almost the beginning of a yawn in the back of your throat all of the time. And you say, well, I just can't hold on to it. The song goes by too fast. Yep, that's true. So what do? You slow it down. You break it into little pieces until you can go from one note to another note and have that pattern stay put in yourselves. Okay? That, in a very simple way, that's what you want to try to do. Give me an example of a tune that would not be that kind of resonant singing.
You would ask that, wouldn't you?
Can anybody help him?
How about yodeling?
Oh, God.
Actually, yodeling is very possible to do this way because yodeling is a different thing rather than tuning resonators. Yeah. Anybody got a suggestion? Okay, this is a really good example. Would it an acceptable song? Okay, come on out here. Okay, David. I'm just looking for a sucker, a volunteer. Okay, so sing natural, small.
One night he prayed to the moon.
Now, do the same thing, but this time get the space.
Oh, the fox went out on the town one.
Put it in the same key.
Oh, the fox went out on the town one night, and he prayed to the moon to give him light. He had many a mile to go that night before he reached the town. Oh,
See, the wheel's turning behind his eyes saying, how do I do this fast? And so to that degree, it was unnatural, wasn't it? So what's David's solution? To say, oh, shoot, that's no good. I don't want to do that. No, the right thing is for David to do that out behind the woodshed about 300 times until he doesn't have to think about it, until on some intuitive level he knows what that pattern's like, and then he just turns loose and sings, like you're going to do right now. We're cutting fast forward. He's just been out behind the woodshed 300 times.
oh, the fox went out on the town one night, and he prayed to the moon to give him light. He had many a mile to go that night before he reached the town. Oh,
And before you quit there, the reason that David could do that, that was only the second time that he had tried that, and it was already more natural. Why? Well, he did. He lowered the key, but that isn't really the answer, because you're going to go back in the regular key.
oh, went out on the town one night. He prayed to the moon to give him light. He had many a mile to go that night before he reached the town. Oh.
And the reason that was successful, now that's his third time doing it, and each time he does it, it's a little more natural. Why? Because it isn't just him trying to think, let's see, there comes an ah, and there comes an o, and there comes an oo, and there comes an e. But there's an absolute difference, internal sensation. I don't have to have a microphone. I don't care. But you get that nice long tall feel. You get that nice long. Take their breath in, and then they will compress their breath so that you take your breath, and then almost immediately there's a setting in the ribs. And what I'm going to ask Derek to do this time is not that, but to rather just take it in and then just leave it suspended there. And then you let it go, and then you take it, and you suspend it there, and then, good. Now, we're going to need to come back down below here because we're going to bump our head in the ceiling here. For most people, there is a sense that you have to make the breath go out of you. But the truth is you've already got a lot more breath pressure inside your body than is out in the regular room. And as soon as you open your throat, the air will start to come out. So what I want you to do, I didn't set this up very well, Derek, so let's start off. Have you got a melody in mind that you could sing? Oh, what a beautiful morning, just the opening phrase of that? Okay, so I want you to take your breath normally. Pretend you don't have that thing on there, and watch what happens.
Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day.
Good. Now what I'm going to ask you heard the quality. It was a nice voice. It works very well. Now take that stretching breath, and from that suspended place, sing the same phrase.
Oh, what a beautiful morning.
Time out. And at that point, what happens is that as he went back up to morning, this sense of expansion started to give way because he felt kind of habitually a need to kind of drive that note into the high. Anybody else have that same sensation in your bodies? That's a very, very common sensation. But I'm going to ask him to violate that habit and stay in that stretched position through the whole of the phrase.
Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day.
Thank you very much. Okay, so that's the suspended breath notion that I want everybody to get. I don't have enough of these to go around, which is the reason that I asked for a volunteer. But in essence, what I could do is just get you have your arms around each other and or maybe not. Oh, shoot. Okay, so everybody stand up for a second. We never did decide on a song that we were going to sing, did we? Okay. Yeah, that in whatever language, Mary Had a Little Lamb is a good one. That actually is original French tune that passed its way through Mozart in Austria and has made its way to the United States. So everybody should be able to sing that one in whatever words you want to sing. But take yourself that stretching breath, suspend it there. And when I say suspend, I don't mean lock, I mean suspend, and let it out. Take it again, suspend it, and let it out. And this time we're going to sing Mary Had, and that's pitch level. Suspend. Mary had a little lamb. Pause. Stretch. Little lamb. My eyes tell me that some of you don't know how to do that. Here's what I'm seeing. Mary had a little lamb, little lamb, little lamb. There's no suspense there at all. Okay, here we go again. Stretch. Mary had a little lamb. Stop, stretch. Start there. Little lamb. Suspend there. Little lamb. And as you move from little lamb, that'll be one place where many of your bodies will want to go, little lamb. Every time the pitch leaps upwards, you have that tendency. And I'll explain in just a minute why. But you don't have to do it that way. As soon as you don't have the breath kicking on it, your body has another alternative way. And that alternative way is the way that you were designed to make that sound. So here we go one more time. Beginning. Mary had a little lamb, little lamb. Suspend. Little lamb. Mary had a little lamb whose fleece was white as snow. Not in your culture, eh? Oh, bother. That, yeah. Okay. Whatever the case, of course, they had to hear the tune once before they could la, la, la it. Fundamentally, what happens when you change pitches in your throat is that the vocal folds have a ligament attached on the inside edges of it. Go ahead and have a seat. And in the inside edge of the vocal folds, this ligament is activated by some muscles that when you activate those muscles, the vocal folds from front to back stretch long. And as they stretch long, they thin out. And as they thin out, pitch goes up. That's the most correct way to make pitch change. However, many of us don't know how that feels. Particularly men don't know how that feels because it puts us in a place that's relatively unmasculine, or so it seems. And so culturally, we hold on to this sort of thick vocal fold pattern. As a result of that, we then have to do something else to get the pitch change, and that other thing is the destructive part. If my right finger here represents the back edge of the vocal fold, and my left finger represents the front edge of the vocal fold, the right way to change pitch would be to have those 2 points move apart. And the ligament, which is like a rubber band between them, would stretch, and everybody knows that when you stretch a rubber band, it gets thinner. Okay, that makes perfect sense to everybody. However, many of you do this. You hold that position. You want the pitch to go up without doing any of the normal pitch change. You hold that position. You add pressure beneath the vocal folds. And when that happens, the vocal folds vibrate, but they also bow upwards. And as they bow upwards, they become longer and they become thinner. And so the pitch goes up. What's wrong with that? The problem with that is that unless you know exactly the kind of pressure that you need to have it under, you'll be always erratic about pitch. And when you need to go up and sing a high note without blasting it, you won't be able to. And so that bowing system of raising pitch is used by many, many people, but it is not the most efficient way to do it. So how do you learn the other way? You refuse to drive your breath. You just stretch your breath. You leave it intact. Whatever energy you start the phrase with stays all the way through the phrase. So if I were going to sing, I've got to find something.
Singing call that everybody knows.
Yeah. Frere Jacques or what's the Christmas carol? What's the Christmas carol that came from Germany? That wasn't the one I was thinking of. Silent Night. That one. Yeah. So let me see if I'm trying to find what that has. Yeah. Yeah. So that doesn't actually. The tune that I'll use to demonstrate is "It came upon a midnight clear." That leap upwards is always a problem for people. It came upon a midnight clear. Now listen carefully to the differences in the sound. It came upon a midnight clear. It came upon a midnight clear. The second one had that quiet breath and required that my vocal folds do the pitch change physiologically correctly. And as a result of that, the upper note didn't have any strain. It didn't have a big accent on it. It just sort of formed part of the phrase, and it didn't draw attention to the fact that it was a higher note than the other one. Whereas when I did the first way, it came, it's like putting a big neon light on that upper note saying, trouble, I can't do that very well, I'm nervous. And you don't want to do that. You want to be able to create a sound that's easy. So that breath suspension is really, really essential. I want all of you to take your fingers and draw a line across your cheeks this way, from the tip of your ear out to your cheekbone edge. Now, we're going to sing, if we can, It Came Upon a Midnight Clear, and I want you to sing, so la 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 la. And I'm going to ask you the question. First thing, sing it your normal way. Go. Now the question is, are the vibrations that are in your body below that line or above that line? And I can already tell you that from the people that I can hear, it's below that line without question. Now, take that stretching, suspending breath and sing again. Do I need to say anything more about that? All of a sudden, the energy leaps out into the room. All of you guys don't feel that pressure down in your throat. It doesn't sit low. It sits high. Am I correct about that? I mean, I'm hearing however many of you there are here in that mode, but collectively, that's the sound I'm getting. Is anybody not experiencing that? Raise your hand if you can't tell the difference between the vibrations that are low and the vibrations that are high. Okay, here's another line to draw, right from the top of your head down, right behind your eyes. Okay, here's your old way, your normal way. Go. Behind that line, right? Okay, now suspend your breath. Go. It came upon a midnight clear. Did you feel the energy move forward? Not because you pushed it forward. It just goes there when you set up the right conditions. So when you're singing healthily, the primary set of vibrations are going to be above this imaginary line on your cheeks and in front of this imaginary line at the back of your face. Or that it's going to sit in the front quadrant of your face, the upper front quadrant of your face. And when you don't use your breath this way, it sits below that line and behind that line, or in the back quadrant, the back lower quadrant of your face. So it is possible to tell while you're in the mode of singing where you are. It can be very much a self-monitoring thing. You don't have to have somebody else tell you once you've got the feeling of it yourselves. Okay, so that's the first part of this intermediate thing. As in the first level, it was just find, ha, 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 find the threshold. Now it's on threshold, keep your breath suspended, and out, and expanded at the bottom. And you can hear the difference. Listen, here's just threshold singing. It came up, no, that's not it. It came upon a midnight clear. Now here it is with suspension. It came upon a midnight clear. Can you hear the difference? Are you awake? Can't tell the difference. Yeah, there is a difference. It becomes more clear. It becomes a little more focused. It becomes a little more finished. It's like a piece of furniture that has one layer of varnish on it as compared to 4 layers of varnish on it. I mean, it's still a table, but it's a little bit more finished in its quality. So breath suspension is very, very important in this intermediate level. The next thing that I want to have you talk about is dynamic contrast. When you sing on threshold with this suspension, then you have the ability to go kind of louder and kind of softer. Why is that important? Because if everything were the same volume, you would never like to hear it very long. And if you listen to a caller that is always this way, pretty soon you want to go out and take a break. And so, yeah. So the idea is that you want to find some variety in your delivery. Some loud, some soft, some, by the way, happy, some sad, some mellow, some lively, all of those different sounds that we have when we're animated and natural in our speaking, it would be really nice to have in our singing as well. And you can infect a group of people with an enormous amount of enthusiasm by just the energy and the excitement that you have in your own voice. Whereas if you just speak with a kind of a dull voice all the time, then pretty soon it gets there it started, the yawn just started. I wasn't even halfway through the sentence. I wonder if okay. It was a timing thing. So nevertheless, you want to find that thing happen. I need another volunteer, somebody who is different. Anybody? Come on up. John, would you hold the microphone, stand around behind? Okay, come and face me. Betsy, put your in resistance that stays in balance.
Yes, that was tough.
Tougher. Now do it really vigorous. I win. No, I want to point out something. Come across, push. Now we get right here, and we're both working really hard, but nothing's happening. Why?
You have the leverage.
Well, but even if we were to get all the way over here, we get stopped because the amount of resistance that I'm giving to her is equal to the amount of energy that she's giving, and we're both working really hard, but nothing's happening. That's what happens to some singers who want to get loud awful fast, but don't want to grow into it. And it gets stiff and locked up. And you know what that feels like when you're singing and all of a sudden your breath gets locked up?
Yes.
Here is the other thing that you don't want to have happen. Come kind of vigorously. You don't want to do that either. You don't want to have one half of the team just kind of go away and not play anymore.
Like stepping on a plum.
Yeah. So you just push across, and whatever it is, whether we're going back and forth, there is a kind of enough connection so that you don't come apart. Good. Thanks very much. So now what I want you to be able to do, I need another volunteer. Oh, come on. Okay. John, you here?
I'm here.
All right. So, John, choose a tune of your own favorite and sing it, and let's get you on breath threshold. So he does this mostly all by himself without any coaching from me. But it could be a singing call. It could be just a folk tune.
Let me be there in your morning, let me be there in your night. Let me change whatever's wrong and make it right.
And immediately he got on threshold where the boundary is, okay?
Let me be there in your morning, let me be there in your night. Let me change whatever's wrong and make it right.
Good. Now what I'm going to ask John to do is to
Let me be there in your morning, let me be there in your night. Let me change whatever's wrong and make it right.
Now you notice that that's as quiet as the first time that he sang, but the first time that he sang wasn't on threshold, and so it had a bit of a scratch in it. This one had the breath balancing going along, and it still had the intimacy associated with it, but it didn't have that scratch in it. And so that we're back to that very first basic skill of making sure that you've got your threshold at work. Now I'm coming back to John, and let's say that screaming at a basketball game is 100% of vocal energy. So that's the top. That's a 10. If that's a 10, that loud piece that you just sang, what was it?
Probably a 7.
7-ish. And if a whisper represents a 1, what was the quiet?
About a 2.
Or maybe
or
a
3.
Somewhere in there. It takes a certain amount of energy to get started in order to get the sound up to threshold. So usually that's 30 or 40% breath energy. But John has right off the bat access to anywhere from 70 to 75% of vocal energy down to about 30% of vocal energy that he can play with and still stay on threshold. And that's a very important thing to know, because as you pass through all of those different sounds, you don't just get loud and soft, you get different vocal colors. Let's go again. John, sing the loud one, and then we'll talk about it, and then sing the soft one.
Let me be there in your morning, let me be there in your night. Let me change whatever's wrong and make it right.
If you were listening to somebody singing below your window, ladies, and that kind of tone was in his voice, what would you say was in his heart? Death. That's right. There's something urgent. There's something urgent about that delivery, isn't there? It's insistent. It needs to be responded to. It could be desperation, or it could be conviction, it could be passion, but it's a heightened emotional energy. Wouldn't you agree with that? Now, sing quietly, but on threshold.
Let me be there in your morning, let me be there in your night. Let me change whatever's wrong and make it right.
And at that point, he's not on the lawn down below singing, he's on the next pillow over, isn't he? In other words, it's close and it's intimate and it's warm and it's inviting. And so all of those colors are available, but you know, the interesting thing was, whether John realized it or not, he was using exactly the same vocal technique. Just like Betsy and I were doing the same activity back and forth with our hands, we would change the amount of energy, the amount of vigor with which we did it, but it was the same activity. The same thing's just been going on with John that opened up to John all the possibilities from this very energetic kind of singing to this very intimate kind of singing. One a ballad singing, one is a kind of you can almost sing an anthem, a patriotic anthem with that kind of fervor, and people would be infected by the emotion that was behind it. Thank you very much for that demonstration. Here's a comment or question. Scott?
Scott Byers, California. How how do you increase your percentage on one side and decrease your percentage on the other? What exercises do you use to do that?
Well, the best thing to do is to not know, honestly and truly, because these adjustments happen on a kind of a subconscious level, and the more conscious you become of the details, the more complicated the whole process becomes. That was the reason that I didn't give any explanation except sing as loud as you can without locking up. Sing it as quiet as you can without losing the connection between the breath energy and the vocal folds. But as you get louder, it isn't just that you start driving more breath through the vocal folds. It is a combination of more vigor in the vocal muscles, in the support muscles, more vigor in the vocal folds, more careful tuning in the resonances that all cause the whole thing to expand without really monitoring the ins and outs of that. That's monitored on a subconscious level. All you really need to know is when you've fallen out of balance with yourself. How will you know that? Because the muscles right here at the rib rim will no longer be suspended. They will be contracted and stiff. Because the muscles in your throat, instead of being passive and loose, will start to become stiff and constricted. Your tongue, which normally stands forward in your mouth, will start to draw back and become tense. Your jaw will become set. The muscles at the base of your skull will become tight and drawn. All of those are indications that you've lost balance with yourself, that you are either trying to sing too hard or that you're not in balance enough so that you can just make the sound flow out of you. And that problem can be true on the quiet end as much as it can be on the loud end. You can be so effortful to try to make it quiet and restricted that it just becomes really tight, just as easily as you can by shouting or over-singing. That doesn't really answer the details of your question, Scott, but I hope that gives an indication.
The reason I want to know is I want to be able to, oh, I'm sorry. The reason I want to know is I want to be able to teach it. So if I know how to increase somebody else's,
I do know exactly what you mean. So would you come on up here for a second? Okay. Scott is going to be the guinea pig that he's hoping to teach sometime in the future.
Yes.
So what is your tune that you're going to sing? Just choose something.
Okay.
And just sing it naturally.
You want me to hold the mic or no? Okay. Granada, I'm falling under your spell.
Good, that's enough. Now, find that on threshold.
That's all I know, so it better be enough.
You can see that in that process, there is a certain degree of compression right there. That's part of what Scott's using to create the drama.
Mm-hmm.
But now what I'd like to have you do is to take your breath and suspend it if you can, and sing the same thing again.
Okay.
He's looking for threshold singing right now.
Granada, I'm falling under your spell.
I can hear a difference from that. Can you? Yeah. Can you tell a difference? The one has a kind of Granada, as if his underwear were too tight.
They are.
Well,
sorry.
And the other one just has a kind of a more natural delivery to it. Just thought of a joke. Never mind.
Thank you.
No, you're not done.
Oh, okay.
You're not done. That's just finding the threshold, right? So that you keep suspended, and the air is coming through, and your vocal folds are passive in their vibration. That's basic level. Now what I'd like to have you do is just what John did. I want you to sing that at maximum volume.
Okay.
And the maximum successful volume will be that point before you start locking up.
Okay.
You may have been there pretty close already. But
yeah, I was. I was pretty close.
Go right again.
Granada, I'm falling under your spell.
Okay. Now, in order to do that, what was different about your delivery? You guys be listening as well. What was different about that delivery? There were three things that I caught. What did you guys, now it's first Scott, what did you feel?
I felt that although I wasn't jerking down here, I felt I was causing more pressure down here, is what I felt.
There was a lot more muscular activity here.
Muscular pressure down here.
That's right.
Is what I felt.
That's one of the three things. Now, there was another really prominent thing that you did. See if you can tell what it was.
changed my posture a little?
A little bit, but it had more to do with the way that you opened your mouth. When you were singing louder, he made more space inside. He changed the resonator, and there was more space so that it didn't get constricted.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
That's the second thing that he did. The third thing is would have been hard for you to hear, and that was that the passivity that was in his vocal folds, that you'll hear in just a second, gave way to a little bit more stiffness, so that this onslaught of more breath and came against these somewhat more resistant vocal folds. They still maintained balance with each other, but it produced a much greater volume. So those are the three things that go on, and Scott was not conscious of the details of those three things and how they interplayed with themselves, but he just simply knew that it was different. Now I want you to do that same thing as quietly as you can and still stay on threshold. You'll know that it's off threshold if it turns breathy or if it turns really tight.
Granada, I'm falling under your spell.
And to my ears, that dropped below the threshold because it got breathy.
Yes, it did.
Okay.
Right.
So Scott's solution at that time was reduce the airflow.
Right.
All by its little lonesome self without making a balanced reduction.
Right.
So you'll know if you drop below that threshold because it'll turn diffused.
Right.
So stay at the level that still isn't diffused but is clear.
Right. And it was more towards the bottom where the notes were lower for me.
Yep.
So, yeah. Okay.
So here we go. Now do it one more time. Quiet but on threshold.
Granada, I'm falling under your spell.
Now that time you were more successful. How did you do it?
I felt opening up a little bit inside. The pressure wasn't as intense. I'm not sure what the third one would be.
Well, it has to do with this, which it should remain sort of blind to the singer, and that is that the amount of resistance that was in your vocal folds reduced.
Okay.
And as it reduced, you probably felt that now that I mention it, that something here in his throat just became more easy, more relaxed. And as a result of that, it didn't require so much energy in the breath to activate it.
That's right, yeah.
So the vibrator wasn't stiff. It didn't take as much from the activator to get it to vibrate, and he didn't feel the top of his voice closing down to squeeze. So if you were to try to teach that to somebody else, you'd say that you don't really win anything by saying it's this and this and this and this.
Right.
But it still happens.
Right.
Okay?
I understand, yeah.
All right,
Thank you.
All right, so that dynamic contrast begins to allow you the freedom to go a lot of different directions, with lively tunes, with ballads, with intimate songs, with commanding songs, with patriotic qualities, and with religious fervor. All of those different kinds of human emotions, with sensual passion, if you want to. Do square dance callers ever have sensual passion? The ones that admit to it, yeah, that's right. The rest of you just also do. But the point is that all of those emotions become part of the fabric of the communication. It's not something that you broadcast. What you're really broadcasting is the choreography. But the underlying context of that choreography can have so many different moods to it. You can get dancers dancing light on their feet by the quality of your voice. You can get them to be thoughtful and tender and ponderous and smooth and elegant by the quality of your voice. We communicate on lots more levels than just the words that we say. The quality of the tone that we use in the way that we do it and the words that we say says almost more than the words that we say. You know the story. If I were to say to somebody, oh, I don't know, Betsy, I love your hair today, she would say, thank you. But if I said, Betsy, love your hair today, she'd say, oh, shoot, I knew I should have washed it this morning. Or something like that. You know, there's this sort of irony that we can put into our voices that means just the opposite of the words that we're saying. All of that becomes part of the fabric when you realize that you have that ability as a singer as well. Are there any questions about this? If I kind of hurry on through this, we may have the opportunity in whatever time remains to actually allow some of you to experiment with these things. There's too many of us. Am I out of time now? 25 minutes? I'm good. We're doing great. The last part is actually the fun part. The third part of this is to take that refracted tuning that we talked about just at the beginning of the hour and make it move around a little bit. I need all of you to have your hands and make them into a little megaphone. As you know, megaphones are like cones, and all the sound that vibrates is on the inside of the cone. And the cone implies that it comes to a point, and so there's no resonance behind that point, even though our hand really can't make a full point. So the first thing that I want you to do is to make, with your hands, a little megaphone, and I want you to put one tip on the tip of your nose, and the other one down here at the knuckles of your thumbs on your chin. So the implication is that there's no resonance left inside your mouth at all, and it has to be very forward. Right. And so this is very much like Inspector Clouseau, where the sound is so very forward, and you think, who would ever sing that way? And only Inspector Clouseau would ever speak that way. It's a very funny thing to do. What is the on Sesame Street, the Swedish chef? You know that guy. It's the. It's very forward. And so if you get some folks from Minnesota, some people that live in the place where the Swedes used to settle, they may talk a little bit like this, but they won't admit to it. Okay? So literally nobody talks that way on purpose except for caricature. And it's really kind of funny. What's that? It's kind of pinched to nasal, very, very forward in the mouth. Okay, the second one goes right across the bridge of your nose, down along your smile lines or frown lines, whichever you perceive them to be, and down to your chin, and it takes in the inside of your mouth back to your eye teeth. So count to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And as you do that, you discover that some of those words don't naturally fit there. For example, 4 doesn't normally sit there, that forward. It's usually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because the resonance wants to sit deeper inside. And so some of your vowels, in order to stay there, have to modulate a little bit. Listen. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's not really a 4, right? That's not really an O. It's a kind of a form that says 4, 5. See? And I can stay in that place. Now, the third place, I want you to put your fingers right by the bottom of your cheekbones, right below the eye sockets, and open your mouth, and you will feel a bone emerge out from beneath that jawbone. Out below your cheekbones, the jawbone starts to emerge. Can you feel it? Where that jawbone intersects with your zygomatic arch, your cheekbones, that is the number 3 place. So now you make that line. Now it includes resonances all the way back inside your mouth to the beginning of your molars, but not deeper. Count to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good. Does anybody in this room naturally talk in that place? Yeah, Derek does. A couple of people do. Most Americans do not. How about you folks from Europe? Think not? Okay, so then you are very similar to Americans as well. Go to the 4 position. That's right here at the hinge of your jaw, and your hands run right down along your jawbone, and now the vibrations are all the way back to the base of the molars to the back of the mouth. Count to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Does that feel like a normal place to talk? That's where most people in the United States talk. In Britain, they don't talk. Well, the educated Brits don't. Of course, the educated Americans don't either, but what did that say about us? Yeah, and German and English are so very close in their design that the language has a tendency to seek all the way toward the number 4 position. And 5 is as silly as the 1 is. It's back behind the ears, and it is the Forrest Gump voice, or Dudley Do-Ride, from those of you that remember Bullwinkle cartoons. And you have to lose some IQ points to be able to talk here. So would you count to 5? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And just like nobody would talk in number 1 position on purpose, nobody would talk in 5 on purpose. They would try to be smarter than that. It actually makes for a real fun parlor game if you get this thing. And you take a song, or you take a poem, or some of these long narrative poems that you just hand it around the room, and then you spin a spinner and have them read between 1 and 5, and they have to move instantly as soon as the spinner arrives. It gets to be a really fun game, and we're still looking for a song that we all share together. But how about Silent Night is close? Yeah. And so, but before we start singing, go back to the number 1 with me. We're going to go through the 5. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Some of you don't get 4. Yeah. Can you just imagine? Can you imagine being out on the golf course and have somebody from a distance say 4? Yeah. So it's clearly modified, right? Here's 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good. Now I'm going to do it, and I want you to listen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it sounds like I just dropped pitches, doesn't it? But I was very careful not to. I held the same speaking pitch. I changed the resonances. And it made it move from very bright and pointed, almost pinched, to very hollow and warm and stupid. And that feeling has to do with the resonances, not with the sound that's coming out of my vocal folds. So you can see how all of these things sort of stack on top of each other. Initially, you teach your vocal folds how to remain passive and not create brightness by tightness, but rather to remain passive. And then you have the ability to move, all of you in this room have the ability to move from very bright sounds to very dark sounds. How did you do that? How did I do that just now? Derek? That's correct. He said by changing the placement of the resonance sets. But then the question is, how do you do that? You move your tongue. Bob is right about that. I want you to go back to number 1 position. Count to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And where is your tongue? Yeah, it's so far forward in your mouth that it does not allow any resonance inside. Now go to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Where is it? It's right. So the 5 position, as you see on the sheet of paper, is a swallowed position. The 4 is a dark position. 3 is kind of balanced. 2 is bright. And 1 is kind of nasal and pinched. And you can go all the way between those, any of those varieties of sounds, by where you put your tongue forward and back in your mouth. Most of us don't have the command of our tongue to be able to do that at will. I had to trick you into it by the little game that we played. But actually, isn't this a kind of a fun game to play? Can you see yourselves having an interlude at a dance or at the post party, just doing something like this to entertain people? It gets to be really a fun game to play. You guys are all sort of smiling, and you were ready to fall asleep a bit ago. So that you have the ability to change the color of your voice from bright to dark at will, as soon as you learn how to do it. As soon as you can gain proficiency in this kind of activity, then you have the ability to go as bright as you want or as dark as you want. Why would you want to do that? For variation. The more popular the song is, the more it will move toward a 2. And the more grand the song becomes, the more it will move toward a 4. And so this becomes a tool. It's almost like a meter that you can move back and forth to say, I want this to be kind of bright and brassy, so I'm going to put it right up there in a number 2 place. And I want it to be grand and full, and I move it toward a 4. Right off the bat, you can do that. So we're going to sing Silent Night. You can sing it in, do you know it? Okay, you know it. Sing it in German. Sing it in German. You okay? The rest of us don't know it in German. At least most of us don't. So here we go. And we're going to start right about there. And what you're going to need your hands. Put your hands up at your face, and I want you to start in a 3. That's right here, right by the edges of your eyes. It's when you open your jaw and you feel your jawbone stick out from underneath your cheekbones. So here we go. And silent night. Stop. That didn't change, folks. That didn't change. So you get silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright. You actually move into that sort of position. Now that sound that I just sang for you, that is the popular beltish quality of sound that's so prominent on Broadway these days. But it comes across on all of the pop stations now. So here we go. You're starting in 3. But when you move your hands, it actually has to make a difference, okay? Here we go. Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright, round yon virgin mother and child, holy infant, so tender and mild, sleeping in And so right off the bat, you can tell that though that wasn't a really excellent execution, or maybe an execution is the right way to say it, the song just got slaughtered. When you start out with it, when you actually have control over some of that information. When you get out into a 2 or a 1, it sounds a little bit like a kazoo choir, doesn't it? So you can see even collectively that this is a tool that over as a group can make a change. But it can also make a very, very significant change in an individual that would be singing as a soloist. So there are 3 aspects associated with the intermediate level of singing. They all add some significant level of skill to the basic level. The basic level is just finding threshold, finding refraction, and learning how to stand up straight. That's the heart and soul of the first level. The second level is finding the way to suspend your breath in a low position, to inhale and remain in the inhaling position while you sing through the whole of the phrase. That's hard to do until you understand it in your body. And once you get it in your body, it's like, gee, that's no harder than doing it the other way. I'll just do it the new way. Suspension is the first and foremost thing of the intermediate level. The second one has to do with the ability to create differing colors based upon loudness and softness. We saw that manifest by 2 fellows here today. Then the third one is changing colors by moving the sound forward and back in your throat. And you can see why if you start playing with this forward-back stuff and this loud, soft stuff, before you get the basic notion of how to get the breath flowing out of your throat, you can get the cart in front of the horse, and you can create that bright quality, but you don't create it healthily. You create it by pinching it in your throat, as so many singers often do. But when you do this placement game, you can stay just as loose in your throat and get it as bright as you ever wanted it, acoustically, not muscularly. This would be a good opportunity to ask any questions if you have any to ask. Good. We have just a few minutes left, do we not? How many? 10. Okay, somebody want to come up and put a record on and do some experimenting? All right, nobody knew that they were supposed to do it. Say what? Yeah. Okay, so we don't get the benefit of that. So is there somebody that wants to come up and sing without a record? Somebody that hasn't already been up? Okay. Can you come and set it up? And that means that you get to be the guinea pig. And in actual fact, what I'm going to do with Dottie is I'm going to get her to try these skills. Once she's got her computer set up, I'm going to play the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 game with her while she's in the midst of a call.
That's mean.
No, it's actually really fun.
Yeah, it's fun.
Because it depends on where you're standing. John.
While she's getting ready, may I
On the microphone, please.
It doesn't have to be on the microphone, I'm going to say. No, it doesn't. And I don't want it on the microphone.
You're going to say something rude. It doesn't necessarily have to be 3 years in a row. It can be a year off in between, whatever's necessary. But what John was saying, I really endorse. You don't want to try to jump up to level 3 and then come back to level 1, because level 3 won't work for you until you've got the basics underneath it. There's a question back here. Jeff?
Looking at it from a different aspect as opposed to just training, moving from Program 1 basics into the intermediate, are we looking at a greater possibility of vocal preservation or care?
Absolutely. The threshold, the suspended breath becomes like the shock absorbers on your automobile. As you get that ability that you can go high without losing center, you can come crashing down low without hitting the axle and grinding. Lots of singers find themselves worn out at the end of a 3-hour call because there is too much friction going on in their throat. And this suspended breath is designed to reduce the amount of friction. The breath threshold is designed to get air moving through the throat. The suspension is a protective thing to keep you from being able to push. And so, yes, it will have everything to do with preservation. Are you ready to go? Okay, yes.
I just want to reinforce that. Dave Holloway from Maui, and I've been attending his sessions for several years now, including the one back in Los Angeles. And before, I can't sing worth a hoot, and I sang all of my vocal cords, and I'd come home after a long dance, and I'd have a sore throat. I don't have that anymore.
It's a miracle!
Put your hand on the microphone.
Do you believe, brothers and sisters?
Hallelujah.
The speakers in it's house speakers. You can't have the microphone.
Also at that one in Los Angeles, I'm going to talk about John Jones. And not the sound, because he's always been a very, very, very good singing caller. Fantastic. But the very first session in Los Angeles, John used to sort of sing his songs like a Texan, just right out of here. But you notice today how he opened his mouth and how that sound came out deep and rich and solid? Fantastic.
It sounds like John Wayne. The way John Wayne should sound. Okay, you ready to go? Sure. Who wants to be the person to call 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? I will. I'm not going to give that away.
What I'm doing here. Okay, we get this here. Should be coming. No, wait, sec. Side space and tiptoe, a deer, a female deer. May I drop a golden sun? Me a name I call myself, but I'm not way too long. So a needle pulling thread, run to follow sun. Tea, a drink with jam and bread, that will bring us back to the I'll just forget the grand square part here for the moment.
And you're going to start off in 3.
Okay, 3.
Now, you can tell that she hands move, but her tongue's not moving too much.
It's gonna come.
Play band.
All right. So I hear a female deer ray up a golden sun. Me a name I call myself. Oh, way too long. So I do and thread. Run to follow south. I drink with jam and bread. That will bring us back to go. So I hear a female deer ray up a golden sun. Me a name I call myself. Oh, way too long. So I need a willing thread. Run to follow south. Say I drink with jam and bread. That will bring us back to go.
You can hear, even though that was fairly modest, it's still, you could hear the change in the quality. You could hear the change in the quality of every sound. Now, the next thing I want you to do, Dottie, is I want you to sing this again, and just like I had John to do, I want, actually let me be there, and I'll just, because I don't have any numbers to call. I want you to start off the very first time through. You can hold the microphone now. I want you to sing at your loudest, but as long as you stay on the threshold. And you'll know when you've gone too loud because it'll start to get stiff on you.
A female deer right up a golden sun. Me a name I call myself. I wait to hear. So I need a willing thread. I need to play a song. Till I drink with jam and bread. Everything else back to go. So I hear a female deer up a golden sun. Me a name I call myself. Fly away to there. So I need a willing thread. And I can play a song. Till I drink with jam and bread. Everything else back to go.
And now I'm going to go back, and I'm going to ask Dottie, when you sang at your loudest, do you even go to basketball games? Okay, some sporting event, yelling at your kids. Something represents maximum volume, right? So whatever you consider your maximum volume, the loudest that you were singing, what percentage of vocal energy was that? 60, 70, 75, something around that name? Okay, and when you were singing the quietest, what was it? Okay, so what I'm going to do to her now is I'm going to say to her, she's going to start off at about 60%. And I'm going to ask her to add 10%, take 10% away, less 10%, and see if she can slide back and forth between that quietest part and that loudest part, okay? From about 50% on down, it became very gentle and tender in various different degrees. And from about 60% on, it became more aggressive and assertive and loud. but they weren't all the same. And can you see how just arbitrarily going back and forth between 60 and 50 and 70 and 30 and so forth, just that, all by its little lonesome self, creates a sense of variety. You wouldn't want to do that in your actual calling, but you might want to sing do, a deer, a female deer, re, a drop of golden sun, me, a name I call myself, far, long, long way to run. So, you see what I'm doing? That's just this long, long, long crescendo that starts to build excitement along the way. And if you're singing along and you're singing, so a needle pulling thread, la, a note to follow, do, so, tea, a drink with them and bread, that will bring us back to do. And all of a sudden, people have to start paying attention because there's something interesting going on. And it isn't magic. It's just normal. But it's that same thing that Betsy and I were doing with our hands, keeping the same kind of production, just more vigorously, less vigorously. Dottie, just very quickly respond to what you just felt yourself doing.
I still felt like I was trying to calibrate the, how much is 20% kind of deal. But certainly I could sense the more mellow, well, not mellow, not the mood change, the mood change as it went back and forth. And this piece of music certainly lends itself to the increasing. I mean, I do that anyway when I'm using the singing call, because it's just the excitement builds as you work up the scale.
John just gave me the signal we're out of time. That means that we're done for another year. Thanks for your attendance. Hope to see you all again real soon.